Hello, what's up everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Flo. If you are new here, welcome to the lowdown. If you are someone that is a repeat visitor with us, I'm excited to bring you guys a brand new series where we're going to be diving into functional labs and really starting to talk about a series that I'm going to title Know Your Numbers, right? Know Your Numbers, and looking at a functional lab assessment, specifically focusing more on blood work here as we get started. But like I said, if you are new here, welcome to the lowdown. Here at the lowdown, we are definitely all about our root cause scenario. I really want to use this platform and just my practice in general to create this shift in healthcare, right? Introducing a totally innovative approach and that goes beyond kind of our conventional understanding and treatment of the human body. This change in healthcare is, like many of you, I know, eager to find, because I've talked to people every single day that are kind of searching for this mentality around their health and wellness, because they're kind of literally done and completely over a lot of the ineffective or like superficial solutions that they're getting from conventional medicine, or honestly even half of the holistic medicine field. They're like, I just feel like there's more, right? I heard that from one of my new patients today. She's like, I just feel like there's more. I'm like, yes, there probably is, right? Because nobody has really helped you get to like the root cause of a lot of these things. So at the lowdown method, we're going to use every symptom, every lab marker as a clue, right? And every clue is going to start to lead us to a closer understanding of the full picture of your health. And we're going to really always delve into just the connections, right? The connections and how our body speaks to each other in different axis, right? We talked about all of the axes of the hormonal systems last week, and we're going to bring in things like nutrition, the microbiome, mind-body medicine, environmental influences, and really like craft a personalized and comprehensive approach that comes with a lot of education and a ton of empowerment, because I'm very passionate about my patients being an active part of their healing journey, right? So I love this platform, and I think, like I said, all of the different things that we're going to get to discuss here, from reversing male and female hormone imbalances, or metabolic disease and metabolic syndrome, chronic gut and immune system dysfunction, skin issues, weight management, I mean, you name it, and we're really dedicated to taking more of a root cause answer to a lot of these different things. So I made a recent Instagram post this weekend. If you missed it, go ahead and check it out. I felt like it kind of summarized a lot of this like really like new spirit and mission that I want to really inject into my practice, which is, I'm going to read it to you guys because I felt like it took a while to write it and get the wording right. And so I think it does it justice to read it. But this Instagram post, I said, imagine a future where healthcare is not reactive, but proactive, and where prevention is prioritized, and where individuals feel empowered with their own self-healing toolbox, where we stop chasing the symptom and we start looking for the source. That shouldn't have to be functional medicine. That should just be medicine, right? And I stand behind this. I'm super passionate about it. And that's why a huge part of this like new model at the forefront to me really rests on this foundation of education. Like, you'll hear that a ton. That's why I love doing these Learn with Flo episodes. Whether any one person joins, a million people join, I don't care. I love educating, and I want to get this type of information out there because I feel like more people are, one, curious for the information. And I feel like a lot of people feel like, I don't know, they need a PhD to understand their health. And I'm like, no, you are definitely an empowered part of this process. And I want you to feel as such as well too. So with this education, I feel like no better than to kick off a brand new series. I like to sometimes do some series with these because I think you guys really get into it and you have some follow-up questions that I can kind of make into a whole series of educational topics. So we're going to be kicking off a new series to kind of give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look at how I begin all of my patient treatment programs, which is with my comprehensive functional wellness consult, right? And as part of this wellness consult, we have the opportunity to complete blood work prior to your initial consult, like all of the blood work that your conventional practitioner like refuses to run or won't run on you. Like, I had a gal last week. She's like, yeah, I went into my gynecologist. She was having some funky menstrual cycle stuff. She's like, and I asked her to run my hormones, and she said she wouldn't do it because it wouldn't matter. I was like, Interesting, right? So as part of this functional wellness consult, like before a patient meets with me, I have an opportunity to order labs for them. That way we can really look at like, okay, what should we be looking at as a comprehensive overview to give us those clues, not just your symptoms and your lived experience, which is really important, but like those actual lab markers too, that are going to be clues to starting to put the picture of your journey together, right? Then as part of that functional wellness consult, we're going to take advantage of like an uninterrupted 60-minute appointment to really learn what your labs are saying about your health and how they connect to your symptoms. And from there, we're going to actually create a game plan to go after the source of a lot of your symptoms, not just like palliative band-aid solutions of like, oh, let's just manage your symptoms for a little while longer, but like, let's start to peel back the layers, right? I don't want this to be just like oh, your labs are normal, come back next year when you feel worse kind of approach, right? So I start every single patient program with a functional wellness consult. Then we can talk about what program is the best fit for them. We can talk about what membership model is the best fit for them, but we always start here, right? And I feel like it's such an important connection piece. And I feel like regardless of whether somebody continues on to work with me or not, everybody normally leaves and they're like, whoa, like nobody has really dug into my labs like that. Nobody has walked through them to help me understand like how they connect together. Like these guys are working in like ratios and relationships with one another. And so it's like, you're not just looking for like, oh, that one's high, that one's low. What am I going to put you on? It's like, no, this is like an investigation where we get to kind of look at the clues and how they all fit together into that normal picture, right? So with this, like I said, functional wellness consult and that blood panel that I order, I think it's really important that people feel like an empowered and educated part of that process. So one of the pieces, and like I said, I'm going to make this a series. So we're going to talk about all sorts of different things that I order in that panel, what types of things you can ask for as well too from whatever practitioners you're working with. And then really be able to kind of take it like step by step and talk about why I order what I do, how do we interpret it, what are we looking for, what are some clues. That way, if maybe you have labs from a recent practitioner and you're like, oh, these aren't the same reference ranges that she talked about, like you can pull those labs out and start to really dig and investigate on your own as well too, to be, like I said, a proactive and educated part of your own healing journey. So let's go ahead and kick off this Know Your Numbers functional lab interpretation series with none other than thyroid labs, right? There's a few different reasons why I wanted to start with thyroid labs. One, because I feel like it's been kind of as a general theme showing up a little bit more and more in practice where individuals are having either overt thyroid issues or they're having thyroid labs come back abnormal and not really having a great explanation of why or like the root cause of that. It's more just like, oh, well, I was just given thyroid medications and like said to come back next year, right? It's like, oh, well, there's actually something that this is telling us. So how do we actually interpret thyroid panels? And also I feel like it's probably the most common one that to me gets like under ordered. And that's not a word. I'm completely aware of that. But what I mean by that is like, a lot of times most people will they'll just get a TSH number or they might like just get a free T4. I'm like, I want people to know like, no, if I go in and ask like for my thyroid panel to be run, like, what am I looking for? What are like the 5 or 6 different markers that go into actually like a comprehensive thyroid panel? So that gives us the clues that we need to kind of start to put the pieces of that puzzle together. So if you're, like I said, ever suspicious about thyroid issues, or you know somebody that is curious about thyroid issues, you're currently dealing with thyroid issues, this could be a great one to send them because I'm sure they have recent thyroid labs, or maybe they're curious about getting some recent thyroid labs, and in which case my functional wellness consult might be perfect for them, right? So when we think about the thyroid and like, what is the thyroid responsible for? What are some different things that I might notice if I'm curious about thyroid issues? Thyroid gland is a gland that's a butterfly shaped gland. It sits right here at the base of the neck, and it is responsible for major metabolic processes, right? That's a very broad and vague term because it does a lot of different things. I like to think of it almost like a thermostat, right? It's responsible for like dialing the metabolism up when there is like ample amounts of energy, ample amounts of resources, stress is low. The body's like, yeah, let's rev up energy. Let's rev up digestion. Let's rev up absorption. Let's make sure we're getting plenty of resources coming into the body because like things are good, right? So we can dial the thermostat up, kind of raise the metabolic rate. We can also dial that thermostat down and lower the metabolic rate, right? So when you kind of start to think about that, poor thyroid function, or like what we would call like low thyroid function, usually feels like unexplained fatigue, right? Someone that's like, no, I sleep like 8 hours a night and I feel like I sleep well and I'm just still exhausted, right? So unexplained fatigue, constipation, or like slow bowel motility, right? You think about like womp womp, like it like dials everything down. So energy is low, constipation usually is higher, depression or anxiety, hair thinning or hair loss, brittle nails, dry skin, dry hair, temperature dysregulation, like I'm always hot or I'm always cold, weight loss resistance, even infertility, right? You think about like the metabolism's like dialing down. And so obviously the body's like, maybe not a great time to be procreating right now. Like we're barely like making our own ends and needs meet. Like, let's not worry about that fertility picture, right? So that can even be part of the equation as well too. But while often thought and often treated as the source of the issues, I will say that the thyroid is usually simply a follower, right? And what I mean by that is the thyroid is under the control of the pituitary gland in the brain, right? So the brain talks to the thyroid. That's that TSH number that we measure, right? So it's under the control of the brain. It's also going to be influenced by like the adrenal glands, whether that's blood sugar imbalances, stress. It's also going to be influenced by the gut and the liver. Like you think about leaky gut, immune system challenges, food sensitivities, right? So it's like, so the thyroid's controlled by all of those factors that are telling it what to do ultimately. So if the thyroid's like dialing down, I can throw stuff at the thyroid, but that's not really like the source of the issues. I'm like, ding, ding. Yes, exactly. You're starting to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle, the clues together like I do with patients, where it's like, oh, so if I'm starting to notice some of these deviations in my thyroid panel, or I'm starting to notice some of these symptoms, like I need to think about like, what's the brain doing to talk to the thyroid? What's the adrenals doing to talk to the thyroid? What's the gut and the liver doing to talk to the thyroid? Yes, that's going to be where we start to suss out some actual root cause approaches here versus just slapping you with some thyroid medication and we didn't actually get to the source, right? So that's why a lot of times like the conventional mode of like just testing the TSH levels, for example, and treating with like thyroid medications like levothyroxine, Synthroid, Cytomel, all of those types of things aren't actually like treating anything. They're treating the symptoms, right? They really, really help from a symptom management standpoint. So I'm not saying that they are like absolutely an absent part of a patient process. Hells yes. But I also want people to understand like, oh, so that's just the start of my journey. Like going to my practitioner and getting some thyroid medications, that's just the invitation. Now the invitation and the door has opened and it's like, okay, I'm going to be taking this thyroid medication while I work on what are the sources of this actual problem, right? It's an invitation to really start to dig in deeper. So we really want to start to think about getting to the source, right? And a fun fact that I came across when kind of doing some research for this too, screening for TSH alone in a thyroid lab accounts for about 7% of thyroid issues, which means that the other 93% of people that are maybe dealing with some thyroid issues are going undiagnosed or misdiagnosed because maybe they only drew TSH and maybe their TSH looked normal and it's like, well, see you again next year. And so they just have to keep coming back year after year with the same symptoms that feel even worse until their TSH is out of range and then they get treated for it. I'm like, that seems unacceptable, right? So it's like, wow, these 93% of people are really getting lost in the sauce. And even those 7% of people that are walking out with a thyroid medication, are they walking out with a thyroid medication and also a referral to a practitioner like myself that helps them work on the source of the issue? Probably not, right? And that's where, like I said, the integrative healthcare experience to me is like, that's where we need to get, right? So at least from my point of view, as a non-prescribing practitioner, I am not prescribing thyroid medications. I am very much supportive of individuals like utilizing those medications along the journey, right? And it's like, but they're an invitation to say like, yeah, they're one tool in our toolbox, but there's more, right? And so that's where, when we come in, I want to kind of give you guys a little bit of a high level overview of what I call the lowdown method for interpreting thyroid labs, so that you guys can now start to kind of look back at maybe your own past labs and see where, was there a complete thyroid panel even drawn? And if so, are some of your numbers in alignment with more of those optimal levels? Or are we kind of trending towards some areas that could definitely start to get our attention and make us think like, maybe we should be digging into this a little bit more from a proactive standpoint, right? So I would say, I call it functional medicine practitioners, but anybody that's more root cause and like source minded practitioners typically start by assessing a complete thyroid panel, all the way from thyroid stimulating hormone, which is TSH. That's the brain talking to the thyroid. TSH, free T4, free T3, even reverse T3, and thyroid antibodies like TPO antibodies or thyroid globulin antibodies, right? So looking at being able, I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 things that really comprise like an actual thyroid panel, right? Versus just a TSH probably doesn't tell us much. And like I said, maybe only catches some thyroid dysfunction in those 7% of people that have elevated TSH, right? So when we kind of break this down and I take like all 4, 5, 6 of those markers that I just listed off, what are we looking for? How do we interpret them? What are some things that we want to kind of know a little bit more, right? So I'm going to literally walk you through a thyroid lab interpretation like I do with a patient, and give you guys, like I said, high level overview of like exactly kind of what we're looking for here. So when I look at the lowdown method for interpreting some of these thyroid panels, first things first, we want to think of TSH. Right? TSH being thyroid stimulating hormone, that's going to be the hormone signal sent from the pituitary gland to the brain, or from the pituitary gland in the brain, to tell the thyroid how much thyroid hormone to synthesize, how much to make, how much to release. So like I said, that TSH kind of functions like a thermostat, and it can give you that general sense of whether the body thinks like, ooh, there's like too much, or there's not enough, right, of that thyroid hormone in the system based off of the amount of messages that it's getting from the rest of the body. How much energy or how little energy do I need to start ramping up here, right? So when TSH is elevated, that's the body signaling that they need an increase in production. Right? So this is where it gets a little bit backwards, right? So high levels of TSH, that's like the brain shouting at the thyroid like the boss, right? The brain is the boss of this scenario, and the brain's like, do your job. What are you doing down there? You're slow. Pick up the pace, right? So when we see those TSH levels rise, we know that the thyroid is not keeping up, or at least the brain perceives that there's not enough thyroid hormone in the system. Let's go. Punch the gas here, right? So when TSH gets elevated, we know that the thyroid is like underperforming, or it's kind of sluggish, right? So more is necessary. If TSH is low, then the body is really scaling back because there's either excess thyroid hormone in the system, or the body senses that there's like some other negative feedback loop coming back into the equation. When we look at optimal TSH levels, we are looking for 0.5 to 2.5 for adults. Conventional labs will let you get above about 4.5, right? So I'm thinking like 0.5 to 2.5 for these TSH levels. And there's a lot of times where conventional labs will let you drift up into like the 4.5 range before they even do anything about it. I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, that tells us that there's been some issues going on for a while now, right? So when we think the TSH, we want to think more like 0.5 to 2.5 is kind of the magic number here, okay? Pause for a second. I'm grabbing my computer because this one's about to die on me with my notes in front of me. Then we get to the secondary mode here where we're looking at some of the free hormones, right? So we get free T4 and we get free T3. The body has an active form of thyroid hormone. The active form of thyroid hormone is the T3. Inactive form is T4. Right? So when we look at the yin and the yang between the active versus the inactive, the body has a little bit of a split here, right? So when the TSH tells the thyroid what to do, the thyroid's getting the memo and it's like, okay, I need to spit out some thyroid hormone. It spits out about let me make sure I get these right. It gets about 90%. I was going to say that, but I want to double check. About 90% of what it spits out is the inactive form, T4. And then about 10% of what it spits out is going to be the active form of T3, right? So ideally, we want those free TSH values to be between 1 and 2. And ideally, we want to see those free T3 values to be between 3 and 4, right? Because the T3, that's the active form of thyroid hormone. That's what's actually going to make us feel energized and vibrant hair, skin, nails, and better temperature regulation and vitality and normal bowel movements, right? All of those types of things. So, like I said, free T4, 1 to 2, free T3, 3 to 4, right? So if majority, 90% of what comes out of the thyroid gland itself is inactive, our body has to convert that, right? So the T4 travels to all these peripheral tissues, mainly the liver and the kidneys and the skeletal muscle of our body. Those are kind of the three main places where our body converts inactive thyroid hormone into active thyroid hormone. So there's a lot of individuals that I've seen where their TSH looks normal, their free T4 looks normal, but their T3 is low, right? It's like, oh, we have a conversion issue here, right? This isn't a production issue. This is a conversion issue. So now all of a sudden I'm starting to think like, what's going on in the gut? What's going on in the liver? What's going on with like, do we have like low skeletal muscle mass? Like what's going on here that the metabolism's not doing a great job at converting to active T3? Right? So that's a conversion issue. The other thing that can happen too is our body can actually, as a safety response, convert from T4 to something called reverse T3. So you heard me mention reverse T3 as well. Reverse T3, if we really want to get into our biochemistry here, it has the reverse T3 has a slightly different positioning of the iodine molecules. And so it looks kind of like T3, but it's not enough like T3 that it can actually dock to the receptor sites of the cells and do its thing. So reverse T3 is like, it just gets in the way. It can't really do anything. And it's the body's way of like, skirt, like, there's not enough resources. I cannot make more T3. I have to shut the system down. It's the body putting the brakes on the system, right? So we start to kind of think big picture, and it's like, okay, why would the body slow down conversion? Why would the body make 90% of T4 and choose not to convert it into T3, but instead convert it to reverse T3, right? We have to think back to those things that circle back to the brain and tell the body like it's not a good time to dial things up down here, right? So when we start to think about all of the different factors when it comes to thyroid health, I'm starting to think about environment factors. I'm starting to think about blood sugar balance. I'm starting to think about nutrient deficiencies. I'm starting to think about physical and emotional stress. I'm starting to think about chronic infections or dysbiosis in the gut, right? I'm starting to think about toxin burden. Like all of those things are going to cause the body to like, put the brakes on and maybe even ramp up that reverse T3. So reverse T3 levels, ideally below 15 is what I want those to be, showing that the body is not actively converting a ton into that inactive form of reverse T3, right? So you can see it's really just a giant feedback loop of the brain being like, let's go, and the thyroid being like, yeah, and the body being like, no, right? So it's gotta be a certain communication all the way from the body to the brain that's kind of supporting all of these things as well too. So The last piece that you'll kind of see from a thyroid panel is going to be what we call thyroid antibodies. And these thyroid antibodies, in a really short sense, are going to be produced from the immune system in more of like an autoimmune capacity towards the thyroid. So these are going to be certain thyroid antibodies are things that we measure if we suspect or we want to check that somebody isn't having an autoimmune thyroid reaction, like your Hashimoto's kind of verbiage, right? So ideally TPO antibodies less than, honestly, as low as humanly possible, but definitely less than 20 is where we want to see a lot of those antibodies come in at as well too. So that gives us kind of like a full picture overview of like what is going on at the level of the thyroid, but we have to remember that the thyroid is a follower, right? So in that same sentiment, it's like, is the TSH elevated? That can give us some clues. Is free T4 low? Maybe that could give us some clues. Maybe TSH and T4 are completely normal, but your T3 is low. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. Now we have a conversion issue. What about reverse T3? If reverse T3 is high, like above 15, tells me that the body is purposely like trying to slow this system down, right? It senses that there are some sort of nutrient deficiencies, blood sugar regulation, inflammation, like toxin burden. There's some serious stressors that the body is purposely trying to downregulate into this reverse T3. If we have some TPO antibodies or TPG antibodies in the equation, now we know the gut's involved and the immune system is like, hey, yo, like we got to slow this down, right? So it gives us kind of a range or a spectrum in which someone might be struggling with thyroid imbalances, right? Regardless, we kind of, like I said, zoom out and want to treat it from like a total body approach, right? So it's like, knowing this, how do we take like the low down method and apply it to thyroid dysfunction? Well, we're going to look at like why there's high or low production in any of these areas. And like I said, we're going to address blood sugar or inflammation coming from the diet first and foremost, like very much a food forward approach. Absolutely. And that's going to be custom for each individual person. But there's definitely, like I said, some rules of the road that we want to make sure that we're applying to eating in a way that supports blood sugar, circadian rhythm, removing any potential like inflammatory foods. And that could be on a case by case individual basis as well. Addressing any nutrient deficiencies. This is a big one. B vitamins, minerals like selenium, zinc, your vitamins A, D, E, and K for the immune system, fat soluble vitamins, right? The thyroid is such a nutrient sponge. So some individuals struggle here just because of straight up nutrient deficiencies, right? And then maybe there's some liver detoxification issues. Maybe there's some gut infections or dysbiosis. Maybe there's some leaky gut or some autoimmune practice like conditions that are going on right now too. All of those are things that we take into account because those are part of the root cause approach. Like, I'm not saying all of those apply to everybody, but if you have one of those and it's enough, that's us sussing out the root cause source, going after that, reversing that, and giving you the opportunity then to be able to explore like, oh, is there a life where my thyroid is functioning adequately and properly even without thyroid medication on board, right? That's kind of what I call like medicine, like going after the source versus just like, oh, here's a thyroid medication, I'm just going to have to increase your dose for the rest of your life and you're going to be on it forever. It's like, okay, then that's not really treating anything, right? This is kind of zooming out and taking that total body approach. So dig into those thyroid labs, pull them out if you have any past ones, refer to some of the reference ranges that I suggested here as more of our functional reference ranges to be able to kind of grab and see some of these things that might be trending early. If you are curious about getting a full thyroid panel for yourself or getting connected to like a comprehensive interpretation of that, you would be a perfect candidate for my functional wellness consult. You can always head to the link in my profile on my Instagram page that will take you to my website, and you'll be able to click schedule a consultation, and that you take you right to the page where you can purchase and schedule that and get labs ordered for you and be in communication on the back end. So super slick, and I'm excited to dig in more on future series, even beyond the thyroid labs, but more about what that functional wellness consult looks like and how to teach you guys to look at your labs from a functional wellness perspective. So have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you guys next Monday.